I think Andre Onana is massively underrated, and when I show you his post-shot XG minus goals allowed metric in comparison to other Premier League goalkeepers, I think you'll see why. But I also think he's being underutilised in possession by Ten Hag, and so I'm going to show you how in the build-up phase, Onana can act as a mechanism to allow United to beat an aggressive man-to-man press, but also how he can be pushed further forward into the middle third to create overloads, allowing a centre-back like Lisandro Martinez to be used in a similar way to how Thiago Motta utilises his centre-backs at Bologna. Before at the end of the video I come on to how using Onana in this particular way could massively improve United's high press. But if you like me prefer the retro jerseys to the current season shirts, then head over to Jersey FIFA. You can find all their Manchester United retro jerseys through the 90s and 2000s, as well as from other club and international sides as well. If you use code Atlantis at checkout you'll get a discount. A link will be in my Instagram bio, which I will leave linked in the description. So despite some pretty horrific mistakes at the start of the season, I think in the last 3 or 4 months, Andre Onana alongside Dalot and Højlund has actually been one of United's best and most consistent players. And we can see this statistically by looking at his post-shot XG minus goals allowed rate in the Premier League this season. Now if you're not familiar with what post-shot XG minus goals allowed actually is as a metric, essentially it looks at the XG of the shots that a goalkeeper has faced and then minuses the goals that they've conceded, meaning that if a keeper has a positive rate they've stopped more goals than would have been expected, and a negative rate of course means they've conceded more. And Onana for United this season in the Premier League has a rate of 0.14 per 90, which ranks in the 80th percentile whilst also having a 74.5% save percentage, ranking in the 91st percentile. And if this doesn't convince you, looking at Manchester United's XG against compared to their total goals conceded should. United have conceded 39 goals in the Premier League this season, ranking joint 4th behind Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester City and joint with Everton and Tottenham. Which sounds pretty decent, right? But they have an XG against of 47.4, ranking joint 13th with Fulham, only higher than Wolves, Newcastle, Burnley, West Ham, Luton and Sheffield United. Meaning that this season in the Premier League, United have conceded 8.4 goals less than expected. And Onana's shot stopping ability is a massive reason for this, as he has the 5th highest post-shot XG minus goals allowed rate per 90 of any keeper in the league with plus 0.14, whilst also having the 3rd highest total post-shot XG minus goals allowed with plus 4, with only Vicario at Tottenham and Jose Sarr at Wolves stopping more goals than expected than the Cameroonian. And so statistically at least, United have Onana to thank for not conceding more goals than they have, proving my point that the narrative that he's a subpar shot stopper is completely false. But while shot stopping is a part of his game that does still need refining if he is to develop into a world-class keeper, it's just one part of Onana's game. His cross-claiming has improved significantly since the start of the season, and he's miles better than David De Gea's. Now he isn't as good as Arsenal's David Raya, who claims an insane 14.9% of his crosses, but Onana is about middle of the road in the Premier League, claiming 6.5%. However, when Onana was brought into United this summer, it was done so to allow United to play a certain way tactically, and to be honest I don't think we've seen Ten Hag use Onana to his full capacity. And in just a minute I'll come on to how whoever the Manchester United manager is next season can do this. But first, let's look at Onana's best attribute, which of course is his ball playing ability. Despite ranking quite low comparatively for his launched pass completion rate compared to other keepers in the league with just 30.2%, to me this is definitely down to the system, rather than Onana himself, because from the eye test, you can see that like Ederson, who completes 48.4% of his launched passes, Onana is an exceptional long passer, being almost like an 11th outfield player. The way he's able to nonchalantly clip a pass over a press or release an attacker in behind the back line, and that's not even mentioning his composure under pressure inside of his own box, which we really haven't seen to the level he's capable of because United's build-up system is completely chaotic. So from a tactical point of view, how can Onana's ball playing ability take United to the next level? And before I come on to this, I should say that there's also another attribute of Onana's which I think is incredibly overlooked and doesn't get talked about enough, and I think utilising it in the way that I'm going to suggest later on in the video can take United's pressing system to the next level. But in terms of in possession, Onana can massively aid United in the build-up phase, particularly against sides like Manchester City and Arsenal, who will look to press United man-to-man all over the pitch. going man for man at the back and pushing an extra player forward. Because even if they do this, Onana, like Ederson for City, is still the free man because obviously the opposition can't push their goalkeeper forward to the press. And so this means that if United have a coherent build-up strategy, they can constantly be looking to use Onana as that free man, playing a pass into him inside his own box where even if he's under immediate pressure, he's got the composure and technical ability to play a pass into the midfielder who can bounce a ball out to the free man, which in this situation is going to be the centre-back on the other side, as his pressing player has moved to press Onana, who can bounce the ball into a player like Mainu, back out to the centre-back, and now he's got the space to drive out with the ball. And even if the opposition look to use the initial pressure on Onana as a trigger press, pushing a midfield player forward to apply pressure to the free centre-back on the left side, somewhere higher up the pitch, this is going to leave a United man free. And if United can play efficiently, they can work the ball maybe into the striker, who can now lay the ball off to the free player, giving United an overload higher up the pitch, which has all stemmed from the opposition having to commit an extra player forward to the man-to-man press in order to press Onana, the free man. But it's not only for a series of short passes where Onana can excel. If the opposition are doing an effective job of man-to-man pressing the United central midfielders and cutting off the passes into the centre-backs, Onana has the passing ability to just clip a pass out to the fullback, immediately allowing United to get out of their defensive third and taking the opposition's front 5 or 6 out of the game. And if a pass to the fullback isn't on, this could also work with a player like Bruno Fernandes dropping off from the forward line where he knows probably the centre-back isn't going to follow him, and Onana once again can use his passing range to clip a pass over the opposition's press directly into someone like McTominay or Bruno Fernandes, who can now control the ball in the middle third, and now United have the ball in behind the opposition's midfield line and can drive forward at the defensive line directly. But it's not just through his shorter passing in the defensive third or lofted passes into the middle third where Onana's passing ability can be used. If United look to maybe have Højlund drag one of the centre-backs into a deeper position, this could open up space centrally in behind the opposition's back line, meaning that if Onana can get the ball out of his feet, he's got the passing range to play a long pass, looking for the diagonal runs into central positions from the two wide attackers Garnacho and Rashford. But before I go any further, if you do want some exclusive content, check out my Patreon. I'll leave it linked in the description. You can get a 7-day free trial. I have got an unreleased video I was working on about Mason Greenwood. However, I am going to alter it and put out another video on my YouTube channel. So if you do want to see that video, check that out. There's also an unreleased video on Matthias Tell, as well as some podcast episodes including my initial thoughts on who are the candidates to be United's next manager, as well as an episode on the impact I think Omar Barada and Dave Brailsford will have on Manchester United. You can get a 7-day free trial that will be linked in the description. But I also think in a more expansive possession system, we could see Onana evolve even further, now contributing to the progression of the ball in the middle third. We've seen Arteta and Pep do it in how they use David Raya, Ederson and Ortega, pushing them high up the pitch on the edge of the defensive third, and Onana has the ability to do the same. It's high risk obviously, but we've seen both Arsenal and City do it, and to be honest I think it's obvious that the benefits of having an extra player in this area, especially a keeper as good as Onana, makes a risk worth it. But if we first look at an example of United in the middle third without Onana, we can then see the benefit of pushing him higher up. In a standard 2-4-3-1 shape, for example, the opposition is able to sit man for man with the two forwards on United's centre-backs, the central midfielders on United's, and the wide midfielders sitting narrow but close enough to the fullbacks to apply pressure if they receive the ball wide, or look to drop deep to create a back three, and so it makes it hard for United to find a free man in space because they don't have a numerical overload. But by pushing Andre Onana high up the pitch, you have the same benefit that we saw United have in the build-up phase, having an overload with 11 against 10. Onana can push up between the two centre-backs, creating a wide base of a back three to circulate the ball around the opposition's front two, whilst United's front three sit high to pin the opposition's back line backwards as well. When Onana receives possession, because he's a free man without a direct presser assigned to him, the opposition's forward in the front two who's closest to him has a dilemma, as if he sits narrow cutting the passing lane into the central midfielder behind him, that will then open up a passing lane out to the centre-back wide of him, who now has space to not just receive the ball but also drive forward. If he instead looks to cut the passing lane into the centre-back by approaching Onana from a wider position, this will then consequently open up the passing lane into the central midfielder, And if instead the opposition's front two decide to sit off Onana completely and remain in a vertically compact defensive shape with the midfield line, this now affords Onana time to essentially become a deeper line playmaker. And as he showcased, particularly for Inter Milan last season, he has the vision and passing ability to find those incisive passes into players between the lines. And this is where United could look to use some well-coordinated movement in the forward and midfield lines to open up the opposition's compact defensive shape. For example, if Højlund decides to drop off from the forward line and both the opposition centre-backs refrain from vacating their central positions in the back line, Onana can now look to thread a pass between the opposition's central midfielders directly into Højlund's feet, who can now turn and drive forward directly at the back line. Alternatively, if one of the centre-backs decide to follow Højlund's deeper movement, this will open up space in the back line which he has vacated, and with United's wide attackers pulling the fullbacks wide with their positioning, this then opens up space for one of United's wide central midfielders to make a run off the opposition's midfield line and into that space beyond Højlund, from where Onana can look to play a clipped pass over the top of the back line to release a runner through on goal. Pushing Onana forward could also free up one of United's centre-backs, most probably Lisandro Martinez on the left side, to push up from the defensive line, playing that libero role that we see John Stones do for City, and Lukumi and Bukaima do for Thiago Motta's Bologna. From here, United can now create a back four, but rather than it being one of the opposition's front line in a positional dilemma, it's now their right-sided midfielder, as with Lisandro Martinez pushing up into the midfield line, but skewed over to that left side, and one of United's double pivot pushing up into the half space, dragging a central midfielder deep and out of that space, the wide midfielder now has a decision to make, whether to sit slightly wider close to United's left back, opening up a passing lane from Onana, who is basically playing as a left-sided centre-back positionally, into Lisandro Martinez in the midfield line, who at this point is positioned in the double pivot as a part of a box midfield, or the wide midfielder could instead decide to alter his position by moving narrower to cover Martinez's movement, but in doing so vacating the space to his right and opening up a passing lane for Onana to then move the ball out to the left back, who now has space to drive forward when he receives a ball, moving the ball into the opposition's half. However, I would also like to see the next manager of Manchester United look to utilise Onana's ability in the press, and I don't mean throwing him forward to pressurise the opposition striker. I mean having him retain a high position outside of his box when United are looking to press high in the opposition's defensive third. And the benefit of this from a tactical point of view is that it would allow United to go man for man, not just high up the pitch but also at the back, with one of the defensive line pushing up to give United an extra player higher up the pitch, and Onana's high starting position acting to provide some defensive insurance, as the obvious risk with going man for man at the back is that if the opposition look to go long, you only need one individual mistake from one of your back line to allow the opposition's forward to race through on goal. However, as we've seen with David Raya at Arsenal and Alisson at Liverpool, having a keeper who's comfortable racing out and anticipating these type of long passes can work to negate this threat, and actually making it quite hard for the opposition to release players in behind from inside their own defensive third, without having the ball run through straight into the path of the goalkeeper. And so whether it's his shot stopping, cross claiming, ball playing ability, or potentially his sweeping, I think Andre Onana is an incredible asset for United to have from a tactical point of view, and in a better system we'd see this a lot more.